Hey guys, this is DFD, aka Dark Frozen Deaths, back with another Kamihime project video. Now, this one's going to pretty much condense the weapon skills video and all that type of stuff. But basically, I'm redoing that because there's been some new stuff that's been added into both global and JP side, and I've got a better way to actually keep track of a lot of this stuff. So that's going to help you out. But first and foremost, I'm going to mention these few things. First off, you need to know what each and every single weapon skill is. So basically, I'm going to go over all of those for the time being, but I'm only talking about the main weapon skills and not the special stuff that you'll eventually come across, like the soul weapons and stuff like that. But also, the best way to keep track of weapon skill amounts, if you're trying to calculate it yourself, is only caring about skill levels 20, 30, and 40, which is max limit break, final limit break 1, and final limit break 2, respectively. Now, final limit break 2 is also nicknamed ultimate limit break for the community, or ULB. So there's that as well. So if somebody says FLB, they mean the first one. If they say ULB, they mean the second one. So there you go. Easier way to remember that is 3 stars for max, 4 stars for final, 5 stars for ultimate. But getting into things, this is a list of all the different types of skill effects that can get either a special effect or get mashed together with something else. Before we even go into that, I'm going to quickly go over each and every single skill effect as we come across them. So this is translated from the Japanese wiki, but you don't necessarily need to know the name for some of these things, so there you go. But starting off, the soul weapons give you either elemental attack, which most of your add-ons can give you, so you may or may not need to worry about that. It's mainly the second effect for the soul weapons that you care about, but they'll either give you elemental attack or defender for the first one. Defender increases your maximum HP, and it's a very important thing to have, especially later on, because you start needing a lot of HP in order to at least survive better, but you definitely will need to get into at least 5 digits of HP to even do some of the harder raids. You could probably get away with 20,000, depending on what you do, but you definitely need to get a lot of HP later on. Now, there's also some other special effects called Perseverance and Carnage and all that type of stuff. That's from the weapons you get from the Ragnarok raids. We call them the null weapons or the phantom weapons, but there's 2 types of phantom weapons, to be quite honest. The ones you get from the Ragnarok raids are the ones that we're talking about, where they will give you any of these other mixed skills, along with possibly something like Carnage, where it's like some extra large assault. Those are only active if you have 6 of the same type of weapon on your weapon grid. So that said, you don't worry about those skills too much unless you have a lot of the same weapon. And even then, they're not going to be affected by certain add-ons that can also up the effects of your weapons too, so keep that in mind. Now, others that I need to point out, Assault is a commonly found skill just like Defender, but unlike Defender, you don't want too much Assault. You don't want to ignore it completely, but you do want to have a decent amount of it. And you don't have to go chasing it for weapons. A lot of weapons tend to give you that anyway, so basically, Assault's something that you go after early game, like before you even get into like the Guardian and the Ultimate raids and all that type of stuff. But by the time you're getting into the Guardian raids, you pretty much don't need to chase Assault too much, because you'll start finding add-ons that can give you a lot of Assault, along with an increased weapon skill grid. They're called the Catastrophe add-ons. And they're only from the gacha, and they're only SSR. But you can find them on your friend list too and get some Assault that way. So there's that. But the next thing to go over, you can see that there's Assault plus Barrage on this Tri-Edge skill. What that is for Barrage is increasing your triple attack rate. And it doesn't go up by too much, but it's got a low cap basically. And what I mean by cap is like there's 2 types of caps in this game: soft caps and hard caps. Soft caps you can basically go past, but it's going to be harder and harder to increase your stuff past that point. Hard caps it won't go past no matter what. Barrage has a soft cap and it's 15%. So by the time you get a 15% increase off of your weapons to triple attack, it's going to get harder and harder to get past it. We'll go over more of that later on the other video, but on the other part of the video, but basically just know that it has a soft cap. Stinger, on the other hand, is a different multiplier, and you may or may not want to get this. It depends on if you get access to the better parts of Stinger, like large Stinger, but or if it comes with a very good weapon. But it's basically like a critical attack, only it works only with elemental advantage. So basically you have a chance of doing a quote-unquote sting hit, and it'll show it on the damage indicator. And when that happens, you will add Stinger to your damage multipliers. Having a lot of damage multipliers is very important in this game if you want to have high damage. So you'll commonly get something like Assault. There's another one we haven't covered called Vigor. But Stinger's another one you'll probably find pretty often as well. But anyways, going down the list, there's Assault plus Defender, and then there's Defender plus Ascension. This is also a pretty decent combo because Ascension increases your potency of healing. Like any of the characters I have, like Regions or Drains or any direct heals, Ascension's going to up all of that. Ascension does it in two different ways, which I'll cover further down the line, but keep in mind that you're going to be chasing Ascension one way or another just to try and maximize your healing. So it's always good to have a few Ascension weapons on the grade. You can get away with one depending on how you do things. Now, the other reason why you probably want Ascension is because of this next ability, Vigorous. And it's paired with Defender on this skill, but you can find Vigor on your own. You can find all of these weapon skills that are paired together on their own, basically. But Vigorous is a special type of thing where it's like, it's another multiplier, but the higher you keep your HP, the stronger it is. And when you're at max HP, you basically get full effect no matter what. So if you can keep your HP up, there you go. That's where it pairs in pretty well with Ascension. And a lot of people tend to go for Vigor over a different weapon skill that works opposite of it called Rebellion, which is jumping ahead a little bit. And Rebellion gets stronger as your HP decreases. So if you want to keep your Vigor high, you need to have some Ascension to heal yourself. If you're more worried about Rebellion, then that's a little bit of other balancing. Vigor and Rebellion are in their own multipliers, so if you're keeping track, there's Assault, there's Stinger, there's Elemental, there's Vigor, and there's Rebellion. That's a lot of skill multipliers. Now, jumping down a little bit further, this Avalanche thing has Rush and Barrage. Take everything you know about Barrage for the most part and apply it to Rush. And it's basically for double attacks. So Barrage is for triple, Rush is for double. Rush tends to get higher increases than Barrage, but you don't really chase double attack too much. Like, if you don't have too much combo rate, then maybe. But once you hit a certain point on combo rate, that's where Rush and Barrage gets a little bit muddy. And it's much, much better to get Barrage instead. So you mainly want to aim for triple attack if you're going for that. So aim for Barrage more than Rush. Now then, this next one is going to introduce two different weapon skills, and I'm going to just basically sum it up as this. Exceed focuses on your burst. Elaborate focuses on your ability damage. And one later down the line, which is technical, focuses on normal attacks. They will increase both the damage multipliers and the damage caps. And these weapon skills also have their own caps. So there's like soft caps on top of soft caps. So keep that in mind. But you are going to want, in my opinion, you're going to want some Exceed, you're going to want some Technical, and maybe some Elaborate if you could fit it into your weapon skill grid. They will help your damage a lot. And they are their own multipliers, but only towards specific types of damage. Now, going down a little bit further, you see something that says Defender plus Pride. And Pride is not that good of a weapon skill because it's like Rebellion, but it only adds towards Assault. Rebellion stays separate from Assault. So, you don't really need to chase Pride. In fact, there's a weapon in the game, 6 of them in fact, that cost 50 Dragonic Eyes, and they will increase your damage output as HP drops. That is Pride, not Rebellion. Don't get those. They're not worth it. Now, going further, you see other interesting weapon skills like Assault plus Exceed, Assault plus Elaborate, Ascension plus Vigor is another good combo. Stinger, depending on how strong the weapon size is, can be good with anything. Same thing with Technical if it's large. Like, you pretty much want large Stinger, large Technical, you pretty much want large Vigor. You want large anything if you can get it. But, you can get away with, small Ascension if it's able to go to 5 stars or the ultimate limit break. Defender, you want parry point blank if it's paired up with something good. Assault's the same thing, but Defender's more important. Rush is a maybe. Rush is like the one you want the least, aside from, of course, Pride. Pride just ignore completely. Unless there's no other forms of Assault, ignore Pride. But, going into things further, there's something called Fatal right over here on the right side of the screen, and that's Assault plus Critical. Now, take everything you know about Stinger and apply it to Critical, but Critical works differently in this one specific way, where it can activate regardless of elemental advantage, and it's in its own multiplier. So, you can get something that says Critical, you can get something that says Sting, and you can get something that says Critical Sting. But it's still a chance of Stinger or Critical going off, and they're both got their own chances and their own ways of working. Now, this other one that says Force, I don't remember if we have her on the global side just yet, but on the Japanese side, there's a character that comes with a weapon that says Force. It's a specific type of thing that gives you special attack, and that's another multiplier. Special attack is kind of hard to get your hands on. Only like a specific add-ons or specific weapons or specific buffs or something like that tends to get you that special attack. It's its own multiplier. So keeping track of all these multipliers, there is Assault, there is Elemental, there is Vigor, there is Stinger, there is Critical, there is Special Attack. And if you don't take Vigor, there's Rebellion. You can have Vigor and Rebellion at the same time, but it's not worth it. And then on top of that, you can go even further with Exceed for burst, you can go with Elaborate for ability damage, and you can go with Technical for normal attacks. We're starting to get into the point where you can use any of these three because there's teams that's becoming very, very powerful. So, my suggestion is to have Exceed, Elaborate, and Technical if you can. But focus most on Exceed and Technical. Exceed definitely if you're a free player. Spending players, you need to sip and focus on Technical more. Because that's where the most damage is going to come out from getting all those large technicals. Free to play is going to have small technical only, unless they get lucky. Now then, there's also some other stuff here on this list that I need to cover. Excuse me. Now, first off, these next two things say that it gives you an effect if it HP increases or decreases. What these are part of the 50 Dragonic Eye weapons that I briefly mentioned. One's for Vigor, one's for Pride. The one that's for Vigor will increase the effect of all your Vigor weapons on the grid, including itself. This is a very powerful weapon to have if you want to get Vigor. In my opinion, you should get it. But 50 Dragonic Eyes is a lot to ask for, so I also don't blame you for skipping it. But it is one of the more optimal weapons in my opinion, because you can greatly decrease the amount of Vigor weapons on your grid in order to get a high amount of Vigor. It is possible to get 100% Vigor, which is a cap for weapons, with only 2 Vigor weapons if you get this. But do not get the Pride one. It'll increase all the effects of Pride, but it's just a massive amount of Assault getting lumped on your grid. You don't need that. Now then, the next one is what I briefly mentioned, which is the Phantom Weapon from Ragnarok raids. Now, the second effect is one of those mixed skills usually. Like, it'll probably give you something like, say, Tactics, or it might give you something like Strength. It all depends on the Phantom Weapon itself, whatever it has on it. That's the second effect. The first effect doesn't care how many weapons are on your grid. But every matching weapon of the Phantom Weapon's type will get their HP and attack increase. The base HP and the base attack, basically. So what that means is that, say you have a sword that has 1,000 attack and 100 HP. Well, this Phantom Weapon just upped it to, if I remember correctly, 145 HP and 1,300 attack. Because I do believe it's 45% HP and 30% attack added to base values. it even does it to itself. So this is a pretty powerful skill to sip and use in the right hands, on top of having like, say, 6 swords or something, that if you want to go after that. But you don't necessarily need the phantom weapons either. Test it out and see what works for you. If your weapons are, if your team gets stronger with a phantom weapon, use it. If they get weaker, then that's where you could probably ignore it. Every time you get a new weapon, you may or may not want to test it, but that's going to kill a lot of your supplies. But I can't exactly help you on that one, because that takes some high-level calculation that even I can't necessarily do, because you would have to calculate base stats onto the damage formula, and that's kind of beyond me as well. I just know the basics of the damage formula, which is like getting as many multipliers as possible. Increasing your base stats is also technically part of that. So, that said, see if the phantom weapon works for you or not. These next two come from the other phantom weapon, which we just specifically call Lucent weapons. These come from the Hyperion and Atlas raids. You have to do those raids in order to make a Lucent weapon. What makes a Lucent weapon pretty powerful is that, just like the matching weapon types with other weapons, you match weapon types with the characters. Characters like specific weapons, usually 2. Sometimes they like 1. But basically, if they like one of those weapons, the Lucent weapons, then they'll get the effect. It is a massive assault and defender spike for the first skill. Up to 50% if you do it right. And that's a lot. The second one, once you get the Lucent weapon to final break status or 5th star, you can start unlocking the second one. And depending on if the conditions are met, and there's 7 conditions, you'll get the second effect. And you still have to like the weapon type on top of it. So somebody that likes, say, glaives, with the Lucent glaive, can get the effect of the second weapon if the conditions are met, like, say, HP above 90% right now. So if a character that likes glaives had their HP above 90% and you have the Lucent glaive, you'll get that effect. But you have to set it as that effect. 5 of the Lucent weapon effects increase your final damage. It's not like a multiplier in the damage formula. It just outright increases the damage after everything's calculated. So after all your vigor, your assault, your rebellion and all that's practically factored in, say you did like 1 million damage, well, this Lucent weapon is going to up it by a certain percentage. I do believe it's 10%, so it will change the resulting damage from 1 million to 1.1 million. You have to have a team that really, really likes the same weapon type, and that can be a little bit tricky, especially if you're trying to keep them all at SSR, because that's the only time it's really worth it. My suggestion, and this is also the suggestion of somebody else too, you can ignore Lucent weapons unless you have at least 3 or 4 characters that like the same weapon type. At least 3 or 4. It's not worth it any less than 3. But personally, I would try to get a full team of 5 that like it, so you can just have the whole team beefed up. Now, the 7 effects for this Lucent weapon. HP has to be above a certain percentage. It's 90% now. It'll change to 70% later on. HP has to be below a certain percentage. It's 50% now, which is reasonable, but it becomes 70% as well. So both of those become 70% later on. The other 3 that do damage happen to be focused on normal attacks only, burst damage only, or ability damage only. So those just have no conditions, just use that effect. So if you have a burst team, you can get the burst one. If you have a normal attack team, get the normal attack one. The last 2 effects, one will increase your defenses towards enemies that you have elemental advantage over, which would be phantom enemies, and say you have a fire team, you'll be more resistant to wind. It is a permanent damage cut thanks to that Lucent weapon, and it's like 10% if I remember correctly. And then the last one is going to up your combo rate. I do believe that's also about 10 or 15% as well, if you like the weapon type. It's basically Avalanche, but a stronger version of Avalanche maybe. Don't worry about the last 2, just worry about the damage ones. The damage ones are the reason you get the Lucent weapon. So there's that. And this last one, you may or may not have it. It depends on when you started the game. But if you play the Labyrinth events, that's where you get these ranged weapons. Don't use them. Do not use them. In fact, I suggest you get rid of those arranged weapons by selling them off for shards or something. Because the arranged effects are horrible. But if you are curious on what they do, it gives you a specific effect to a specific character for a specific amount of time. And that's it. Only once per fight. It is crap. You can get all those better effects from buffs and all that and get it for your whole team. So, all in all, ranged weapons are horrible. Do not get them. But now, moving on to this next part, and I have to type this in. I mentioned weapon sizes. This is basically a quick little table of all the different sizes. Now, I tried to color code it to make it easier to follow, but essentially, you have, say, small fire is called fire, but large fire is called inferno. It's stuff like that. I went in-game in order to get all these different names. So these are the actual translations for these names. Now, that said, you do want to aim mostly towards large. If you can get an extra large, baby, because extra large usually can use only one catastrophe. I don't want it to hit its cap. But, well, that's assuming it even has a cap, because Assault and Defender does not. But, basically, you do want to aim for a large or better. If you could fit an extra large, then maybe. It all depends. Now, this last one, called All Element, there's some specific weapons that happen to give this. There's one that really comes to mind, which is a beginner weapon, which is a Dark Sword Diablo Plateau, or it's hard to pronounce the name of it. That's what comes with Rainbow, and it gives you Rainbow Assault. That means, regardless of whatever element, it's going to give you that assault effect. So, early on, it's not bad. You can put it on any grid just to fill some gaps, but you will take it off later. All the ones that are all element are very, very weak, but they are very good for the newer players. So, use them before you start getting into the, I would say the ultimate raids. But, after that, that's when you probably would start taking them off your grid, because there's better weapons at that point. But if you're still getting your weapons from Epic Quest, which is the first thing you should do, then all element weapons are still pretty good. They just fill the gaps so you can actually get into your raids faster. Plus, you can save up those Epic Quest weapons and all that for like materials later on. You will need to sell your weapons for fragments or start breaking them down for like skill orbs and all that type of stuff. So keep that in mind. But all elements good early on. After, I would say, the ultimate raids unlocked, that's when you can probably start getting rid of them off your grid. Now, this last part is where it gets a little bit interesting, and that's where I'm going to start breaking down the caps and all that. This is yet another table I've made, and it looks like a cluster at first glance, but when you really start looking at it, you can see the parentheses for skill level 20, skill level 30, skill level 40, and all that type of stuff. I'm going to go over each and every single one of these, just not in full detail. So, Assault, basically, the higher the skill level and the higher the size, the more of it you get. Simple stuff. Same thing for Defender. I don't have to really explain too much about that because there's no limits, there's no nothing else. Just get it and it's on there. Defender is more important than Assault, though. Now, Pride, here's the interesting thing about that. It gives a base value to Assault. So, a small Pride at skill level 20 gives 7.5% to your Assault total. It also gives an additional amount based on the HP you've lost. So, generally, if your HP gets stupidly low, you can start getting up to 11.4% more from that same small Pride. That's how that works. So you take the base value from whatever your skill level is, and then there's an up to amount based on the HP you've lost. So if you happen to use a Pride weapon, that's how that works. Now, Stinger is the next one I have on here, and the interesting thing about this is that it doesn't increase the multiplier when you level up the weapon. It increases the chances of it going off. So your activation rate is what's increasing when you do Stinger. This is why you want a large, because if you can get a large to skill level 40, and then get 2 catastrophe add-ons, you basically double it to over 100%, meaning it is guaranteed to go off. The next closest thing would happen to be a large at skill level 30. So yeah, there's that. But the specifics of Stinger, each Stinger weapon adds 20% to the Stinger multiplier whenever it goes off. Each Stinger weapon has its own chance of going off. So if you have two Stinger weapons, one can go off for 20%, two can go off, as in both, for 40%, or none can go off. Basically, get the largest Stingers you can get as far as possible, and that's going to up your chances of Stinger activating. But remember that Stinger does not work if you do not have elemental advantage. So if you do something like, say, send a fire team into a thunder raid, you will never see Stinger activate. But if you send a fire team into that wind raid or phantom raid, you will see Stinger activate. So keep that in mind. Now, Ascension is split in between two things, and it's going to be the same case for the next few. How this works, you have basically a cap on your heals, and they also heal by a certain percentage of your HP. So an ability that heals the whole team might say have a heal of 2,000 for the cap, but if you don't hit that cap, you'll heal up to half your HP. That's an example. Ascension increases both of these things. So, for example, you have a skill level 40 large Ascension. That means that skill that when heals up to 2,000 HP, it now will hard cap at 3,000. And on top of that, if you never hit that hard cap, if it healed up to 50% of your HP, it now heals up to 57%. The only time I can really see the heal multiplier really coming into effect is for characters that do not have a cap on their healing. Like, say, I use this as a common example, but there's a limited R character on Light that can heal the entire team by half their HP. No cap. So that means there's no limit to how far the heal will go, other than the fact that it will just give you half your HP back. Well, that same large Ascension at skill level 40 would turn that 50% to 57%. So getting enough of that, you can effectively get her to heal all your HP back. Now, the cap on the healing, like say that heal for 2,000, you try to keep increasing it, it's only going to go up to 200% more of its original value. So that's how Ascension would work on that one. That 2,000 can only go up to 6,000 period point blank, because it has a hard cap. That's what this known limit is over on the side that says 200% hard in like light blue. So that's what it is for that. So the cap has a hard cap. The healing multiplier does not. It is the same case for Exceed, Elaborate, and Technical. They have different types of effects depending on how it is. Now, Bursts have a soft cap of 1 million. This Exceed cap will increase it. Once you hit that 100%, which makes it 2 million basically, then any more Exceed past that point is going to be reduced by 90% of its effectiveness, because it only keeps 10% of the excess. So, say you have something like 300% Exceed for some reason or another, like 300% to the burst cap. It's really only going to keep the first 100%, and then you're only getting like 20% more. So, you would think you have a 4 million burst. It would really only be 2.2 million. That's just off at the top of my head real quick. So that's how that works. The multiplier is a different story though. Bursts have a multiplier based on the rarity of the character, or for souls, the rarity of the weapon. You can only increase about weapons by up to 500%. So if you have Exceed weapons on your grid and increase the multiplier, only up to 500% for the burst multiplier would be there. Which I do believe is a maximum amount of 1,000 for most SSR stuff, and for the awakened characters, I think it's 1,050%. I could be wrong, but 1,000% is generally like the limit we all assume. So that said, you don't worry too much about the multiplier. You get Exceed for the soft cap increase for your burst damage. So once you hit that 100% for the soft cap increase, you can generally stop getting Exceed. But don't worry, if you go past it, you still keep some of the excess. Elaborate works the same way as Exceed, only it's for ability damage. Simple stuff. How it works is completely different, where Elaborate from weapons has its own cap. Elaborate from buffs has a different cap. So elaborate from weapons, you only get 50% to the skill damage cap increase, and the skill damage is pretty brutal once you get past the point where it starts decaying. So you definitely want to increase this for skills. But you only get to keep 20% of the excess, or basically 80% of it is lost. So if you have that same 1 million damage for an ability, then you only get to really up to like 1.5 million before you start struggling to push it any further. So there's that. Now, that's just for weapons. Buffs can also do it too, for up to like 100% for that, so you get 150% total before you start struggling on that mess. So that said, that same ability that did like the 1 million damage will now deal like 2.5 million if you somehow hit the limits for both. You can still go past that 50% for weapons, but again, it's going to decay on you. So it's just going to get harder and harder. I wouldn't worry about it too much. The multipliers are an interesting little thing because each ability has its own multipliers. Like some might do like 10 times your like have a 10 times multiplier, or some you have a 2 times multiplier. Some might multi-hit and have a half like a 50% multiplier or something like that, instead of like a 1 times. So this will start upping all of those. Multipliers tend to be the biggest known increase for all that type of stuff, but it still doesn't change the fact that you're capped pretty hard. So again, get elaborate for the cap increase to your skills. Technical is a bit of a different case though. When you level up a technical weapon, you're increasing the multiplier for normal attacks. The normal attack multiplier starts off at 1. But each weapon gives a base increase to the normal attack cap. This is why I said you need large technical if you're going to start spending. Because the thing is, the free-to-play weapons that you get from malicious raids are all small. So you're only getting like 5% to your normal attack soft caps. And the soft caps for normal attacks are kind of muddy because the way that works is like, it starts off at 350,000 and then 100,000 past that, past the first cap is where the second cap is. 200,000 past the first cap is where the third cap is, if you could follow that. But simply put, you're upping that first cap in order to just up everything else. So there's a soft limit on it, which is 100%. So that 350,000 for first cap can go up to 700,000. Past that, it will decay. We just don't know. Nobody knows. We haven't figured it out yet. The multiplier increase is a different story though. Buffs can do this too, but the weapons will give you like a permanent increase to the multiplier as long as the weapon's on the grid. This is the main reason why you level up your technical weapons, so you can get that permanent multiplier increase. So let's say that you somehow got your like enough large technical in order to hit the 100% to the soft caps. Then generally you'll have, say, 260% to your multiplier, which is almost to the limit on that one. So technical, definitely aim for large. Like elaborate, you may get away with like a medium or a small, it depends. Same case with exceed, but technical, definitely try to get the highest sizes as possible. Rush, I don't need to say much crap about that I haven't explained, so I'll just get to the soft caps. A 25% increase in double attack rate, because these are activation rates for Rush and Barrage. Now, you can go past it and it'll keep half the access. Same thing for Barrage. It has a 15% soft cap, but you can go half the access past it. So, for example, if you happen to get, say, 55% in Rush, then it'll keep the first 25%, the remaining 30% will get cut in half. So you really have like a 40% instead of a 55%. So it doesn't decay that hard, but it's still there. Same case with Barrage, basically. It's like, you have, say, a 45% increase on Barrage, then first 15% is there, the last 30% is getting cut in half. So you will literally have a 30% instead of a 45%. That's basically how that works. Rush and Barrage is the thing you can actually try to power on past the limit if you really want to, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. If you are going to do it with large barrage, if anything, or extra large if you can. Because if they come with good weapon skills that help you out, like say somehow you get a critical on a barrage weapon, then maybe it'll probably be worth it. Who knows? But that's something that you really would have to try for, and it's something that you worry about lasting, like if you still have some space left over after getting everything else. Now then, critical is something that's going to be very hard for anybody to get unless you spend on the game. I'm going to say that right now. Stinger is harder to get for free players, but they can still get some. But critical is definitely something that you have to spend on the game for, because it's pretty much just all gotcha weapons for them, as far as I know. But again, what it does is basically you have a chance of a critical, you have a chance of a stinger. Both can still go off, but critical can go off regardless of who you fight. Stinger has to be elemental advantage. The thing with critical, though, is it's rooted to a 50% increase to its multiplier. The kicker is at the fact that all the weapons pull together into the same activation chance. So, stinger weapons, the activation chances are split between weapons. Critical, they all pull together for one activation chance. But stinger has potentially more in its multiplier because of how the weapons work. So you can basically get 3 stinger weapons where you can get a chance of 20%, 40%, or 60% to the stinger multiplier. You can get 3 critical weapons, and it'll just all either be, you either get that 50% or you don't. So that's how that works. So naturally, of course, it has a hard cap of 100%. Don't worry about it past that point. But good luck getting it to 100% because you still need at least no less than 3 critical weapons and double catastrophe add-on to even try for that. The less catastrophe add-ons you have, or guardian add-ons even, then the harder it's going to be to get to that. So keep that in mind. Now, Vigor. Vigor is the same case with Elaborate, where it's like weapons are separate from buffs. But and it's the same case for Rebellion too. But generally with that, again, keep your HP higher and you get more Vigor. Rebellion, keep your HP lower and you get more Rebellion. Vigor has a 100% cap for weapons. Rebellion has a 150% cap for weapons. But Rebellion buffs only go up to like 50% as far as we know. Vigor buffs can go up to 100%. So you can generally get 200% of either one done right. Now, here's where it gets a little bit different from all the other stuff. This is why it says unique. When you get past that 100% on Vigor, it doesn't go past that 100%. It instead lowers the threshold to have that 100%, so you no longer need full HP. You can actually be a little bit lower than that. So the more Vigor you get, the lower that threshold can be. The issue with Vigor is the fact that it very quickly tapers off the lower your HP drops. And at half HP, you lost all Vigor. So it can start spiking pretty hard, depending on what you do. But generally speaking, no, you do want to try and get as close as possible to that 100% Vigor and then just stop. Same case for Rebellion, get as close as possible to that 150%, then stop. But just like Vigor, the more Rebellion you get, the higher your HP can be before it starts tapering off. So that's something to know. So if you somehow overload on like a crap ton of Rebellion, you could probably be somewhere like, say, 25% HP remaining and still get full Rebellion, just for an example. Instead of having to be like 5%. But you get what I mean. But that's basically all the different stuff on these weapon skills. If you have to, play this video over and over again. I know it's a lot to load on to somebody, and it could be hard to try and keep track of. But, again, just remember, Assault's pretty common for a multiplier. Stinger, you need elemental advantage for. Critical, if you happen to get a critical weapon, it can go off on any other. It can go off regardless of what fight. It's just the fact that it's a lower chance of going off. Definitely try to get your Ascension, your Exceed, your Elaborate. If you can, try and get some technical. But that's not until way late in the game where you get the right type of weapons. Rush and Barrage are basically filler. Try to get Vigor or Rebellion. Don't get both. So there's that. And definitely try to keep up on your defender. If you know you're low on HP, then get more defender. It's easy to get. But and last but not least, ignore pride unless you literally have no assault. But that's all for this. More of this will come soon, and like I said, I wanted to try and condense this in order to make it a little bit smaller, but it still went to 40 minutes basically. But again, this is just an update on that type of stuff, and I have all the different percentages and everything just listed here, so it makes it a little bit easier. But anyways, that's all for this. More of this will come soon, and take care.